something completely different. First of all, apologies from Russell Haynes, who was really looking forward to giving his first talk here. He's our newest member of our committee, but he isn't well, so he can't come today. However, I have something which I heard earlier, yesterday lunchtime, to give us a talk at Tan-y-Garth yesterday, because we have... Can you hold up a poster at that, Kathe? In case I'm sure you've had your email through, but we have an exhibition at Tan-y-Garth called The Art of Eugene, Halliday and Kathe Schuftan. Let me just pass you one. Fantastic poster, Derek Murray has designed. If anyone knows of anywhere they could get a poster put up, would you take one as you leave and find somewhere to put it up so that more people find out about the exhibition? It's in North Wales, but it's not too far away. Lots of interesting aspects to this exhibition, which you'll learn about. I've been circulating the art gallery where Kathe had the last exhibition, Jewish Museum, and various other places to try and get some interest drummed up for this. Do go and see it if you can. The big advantage here is Kathe Schuftan is a forgotten artist, Jewish refugee from Nazi Germany, who we're rediscovering. And if we can get people interested in her, in the rediscovery of her, they will come along and find Tan-y-Garth, which needs new people. They will also come along and find out about Eugene. We need more people to find out about him. So I'm hoping that this will help. We have managed to get this exhibition listed on a website of a thing called the Insiders Outsiders Festival, which is about German Jewish refugees and their contribution to British culture. So we're on their website, so we've got their logo on our poster as well. So please do go. And there is a personal invitation issued to every one of you, if you are able to go to a meeting with the masters in the library. So you'll be invited to go to the library, go in one at a time, and there is a seat reserved for you by the fireplace. I will say no more, but it's a very good invitation. Okay, so sorry? Tan-y-Garth Hall. Can you hear me okay? I've got the right place. Sorry, if I'm not wrong. So apologies to Judith, you're going to hear the same talk again, because Judith went yesterday to the opening. There are a number of dates when it's open. If you can't make any of those dates, ring up and they may be able to arrange to open it, especially for you, at a date to yours and their convenience. They just simply haven't got the staff to man it open all the time, but you can make arrangements to go.
When does the exhibition finish?
It's on at least until Christmas or December, and there's an invitation to their Christmas do, which is fairly close to our Christmas do, and the exhibition will be open then as well. So the new exhibition at Tan-y-Garth, well worth doing. Dare I say it myself? I was invited to put on an exhibition of Eugene's work at Tan-y-Garth. I said, yes, no problem, but I can't do it till next year. So they said, well, it's September, because the daughter of one of the people at Tan-y-Garth, Anthony O'Toole, his daughter Naomi, is studying history of art at the Courtauld Institute in London. She's just about to go into her second year, so she was curating the exhibition as a summer project, so it had to be now. And it's been really, really interesting working with her. She's about 19 years old, heard about Eugene, but she's taken an interest and she's really got involved with reading the books, listening to some tapes, looking at the art. So I've been sending her lots of photos and pictures because she's in London, I'm up here. So she's made a selection from Eugene's work. She stuck with what I sent of Kate's because I've only got 8 pictures, 2 of them are on loan. But she selected from Eugene's work. It wasn't the selection I would have made. So it was very interesting to see what she picked, and the way she displayed it was not the way I would have displayed it, which is also very interesting. And she's done all the captions, with a little bit of proofreading from me. So it's a very fresh look at Eugene's work, and it's very interesting to focus on him as an artist and present him in that way. Whereas usually we're looking at the ideas and what he taught. This is another way of looking at him, which brings in other things. So it was a very worthwhile exercise, very, very enjoyable and enlightening. So I gave a talk yesterday for the private view opening. Some of it you'll have heard before, some of it is a bit different. So please bear with me and I'll give you my talk. Okay? This is a story of two artists who met during the Second World War in Manchester. I felt that it was very appropriate that the exhibition opens this month, which is the 80th anniversary of the outbreak of the Second World War, which is a time of commemoration. And I felt it was also appropriate that the exhibition was held at Tan-y-Garth, because that's the home of the first of two organisations which were founded by Eugene Halliday. The IHS, most of you know, some of you may not, was founded by Eugene with Ken Ratcliffe, and they also met during the war in Manchester. Kathe Schuftan escaped from Germany in June 1939, shortly before the outbreak of war. She was born in 1899 in Breslau, Lower Silesia, then part of Germany. Now it is called Wrocław, and it's in Poland. And she was born into a Jewish family. At that time, many Jewish families were so well integrated into society that they thought of themselves as German. But her brother later said he was Jewish by race and Protestant by religion. But this was to be no protection as the Nazis rose to power. Kathe studied art in Breslau and Munich, and one of her teachers was the graphic artist Hans Westerhoff. His work was angular and modern. He designed minimalist housing, would have looked perfect now. Stained glass, logos, textile design, poster art, book and magazine layout. Kathe was subsequently able to earn her living as an artist in Breslau. Her work was held in two museums, and she also taught drawing and art. But as the Nazis rose to power in the early 1930s, life got more and more difficult for Jewish people, and they resisted the oppression. Some were socialists and communists, including Kathe. Her work was linked with Die Neue Sachlichkeit, the new objectivity, a movement of George Grosz and Otto Dix. It was new realism bearing a socialist flavour, and it railed against the corruption and demoralisation of Germany after World War I, and it was a more universal, savage satire on the human condition. Kathe became a close friend of the Jewish lawyer Ernst Eckstein, one of the leading figures of the Socialist Workers' Party in Breslau, the SAP. He was arrested by the Nazis in May 1933, put to hard labour and tortured in Duragoy camp. He was said to have committed suicide, but Kathe later told her friends in Manchester that he had been murdered by the Nazis. Kathe moved to Berlin after Eckstein's death and was involved in the underground activities of the SAP. In November of the same year, she was detained and tortured by the brown shirts, and all the pictures in her flat were destroyed. In 1934, she was sentenced to 2 years in prison, along with 24 other SAP members, and charged with high treason. In 1937, her art was described as expressing, this is an art critic, a couple of years later, her work was described as expressing a primarily tragic, accusing attitude towards the world, with all its stark misery, agony and hardship. Her work included political satire as well as the emotional expression of her experience. The Nazis persecuted the Jews and encouraged them to leave the country from 1933. By 1939, 1/3 had fled the country and forced emigration began, belongings being confiscated at the point of departure. This is before the final solution was implemented, trying to get them simply to leave the country at this point. Kathe left Berlin with her mother in June 1939. This may have been possible because her brother, Dr. Paul Schuftan, a chemist, had been in the UK since 1936 and was working for British Oxygen, which he did throughout the war. Kathe's mother stayed with the family in Richmond, London, but Kathe settled in Manchester. Refugees had to be sponsored and find work. Kathe was taken in by Neville Rawlinson, a bank manager who appreciated her art. He would say to her, "Never mind the dishes, go and paint." He wasn't really bothered about her doing any housekeeping. When war broke out, Germans in the UK, people who were already living here, and refugees and others, they were being interned as enemy aliens. Though many refugees, like Kathe, were exempted. However, following the invasion of Norway in 1940, all Germans, Nazis and Jewish refugees alike, were rounded up into camps. It is not entirely clear if Kathe was interned or for how long. Sources differ. One source says she was interned until 1943, then released for war work. But the first of her works to be recorded in an exhibition was at the Manchester Academy of Fine Arts in spring 1940, and again in 41 and 42. The Manchester Guardian Reviews wrote in 1940, this is her first exhibition that we know of, "As portraits, they are remarkable for their vigorous intensification of the sitter's personality. As drawings, they are clean and unhesitating. As colour, they are radiant and arresting." Her watercolours were on a large scale. She drew first in pencil, then applied a translucent wash. Some had subdued, muddy colours, brown and ochres. Others were bright, clear, often primary colours, blues, yellows and red. If Kathe was interned, perhaps her friends put her work forward for exhibition. If she was interned, it would have been in the Isle of Man, in the women's camp at Port Erin. It could have been there or in Manchester, but she met Eugene Halliday. He had a long connection with the island. During and after the war, Kathe exhibited in several galleries and with the Manchester group of artists founded by Margot Ingham, which included L.S. Lowry as their most well-known member. Often Eugene's and Kathe's works were in the same group exhibitions, and reviewers saw similarities in their approach. Here's a review from 1947. "A keener aesthetic emotion combined with powerful draftsmanship is to be found in the work of Kathe Schuftan, but it is often overlaid, swamped, and sometimes obscured by feelings of a less relevant character. There is no doubting the artist's passionate sincerity or her compelling urge to share her emotional experience, but her quality as an artist can in many cases be appreciated only by those who are willing to submit to an assault on their heartstrings. Most people will prefer the subdued appeal of Old Couple in Sunny Street and will fight shy of the symbolism she uses in collaboration with Eugene Halliday, a highly accomplished technician. Even the most squeamish will admit, however, that the otherwise pleasant watercolours of Hopwood and Smith pale into insipidity in such company as hers." Now we turn to Eugene. In 1911, the year that Einstein was carrying out the calculations that led to his theory of general relativity, Eugene Halliday was born on a train. His parents were in music hall and travelled a great deal for their work. His mother was a singer and dancer, his father a musician and acrobat who could turn somersaults while playing the violin. Eugene's brothers fought in the army in the war, one dying of wounds from battle. Eugene could not have fought because he was partially paralysed from a childhood illness. He had a limp and his left hand wasn't fully articulated. He had intended to be a violinist, but the paralysis stopped him. He went to the Manchester School of Art at 16, where he received a very thorough grounding in the theory and practice of art, specialising as an illustrator and cartoonist. He went on to work for newspapers and as a commercial artist, which I believe would now be called a graphic designer. Sounds much better. Before the war, with a friend, he started a business making small, finely carved plaster models for the holiday trade. During the war, Eugene was a registered conscientious objector who helped his friends in tribunals. He contributed to the war effort, helping to run a textile factory and acting as a fire watcher in the Blitz. Early in the war, he met Ken Ratcliffe around 43, 44. Actually, that's not that early, is it? Anyway, 43, 44 they met. Ken had been in the Fleet Air Arm, and he was shot in the leg, subsequently helping with the evacuation from Dunkirk. I think he was one of the Cockleshell heroes. Ken was then invalided out for the rest of the war and went to live on the Isle of Man. His mother was Manx, and it was cheaper to live there at the time of rationing. Eugene also spent his time between Manchester and the Isle of Man, and Ken joined him in the plaster model business, and also in Eugene's esoteric, religious and philosophical studies. Eugene described himself, as far as I know, only as artist, but that word for him had a wide definition. It covers all the creative arts and includes the word articulator. He was deeply and widely read in philosophy and the scriptures of world religions. Yet he also kept up with the science of his day. Thank God for Einstein, he would say. And science has shown that all matter is energy. In other words, body and spirit are not separate. Eugene was a healer with a deep knowledge of psychology. He worked to help many who had suffered trauma as a result of the war. He went on to work in the field of psychotherapy. One of his friends was a Jungian analyst, another Jewish refugee from Germany. Eugene developed and taught his own psychotherapeutic method. Eugene's art school education had been very conventional, but with his psychological insight, he developed a creative method which he called psyching or letting. It could be applied to any creative activity: drawing, painting, music, dance, acting, and self-discovery. The method was both free and finely focused. A subject was set, and the movement, etc., was carried out with immediacy and without intellectual interference. A practice engaging body, mind, and spirit in coordinated action. Here we have a quote now of Eugene writing about what he means by art. The artist has to experience reality as it is. Then he has to interpret what he experiences. He must see clearly, think accurately, feel sensitively, and will strongly to manifest these facts in his work, which is therefore legitimately to be viewed as an objectification of these facts and of the inner processes of his soul, whereby he arrived at such an objectification. To be able to objectify inner processes and experiences is to be able to create. The artist is creator and bears a similar relation to his work as a woman does to her child or a god to his creatures. Man is what he is because he is able, by the art of his predecessors, to participate in their experiences. Unlike the animal, which enters usually into life equipped in large measure for life, man enters life as a helpless baby. What he acquires, he does so largely from the educational efforts of his parents and teachers. In every historical period, the great artists, the men and women who have articulated reality into new significant patterns, have left in their work the means to the humanisation of man. The great writers, poets, painters and musicians have made their contribution to this humanisation by the works they have left us. They have opened our eyes so that we may see reality in new and valuable ways. They have opened our minds to the reason of the universe. They have opened our hearts to the experience of real relationships, without which there will be no real life, but only the dead routine repetition of activities from which all significance would have been drained. Eugene wrote, worked with individuals and groups, and lectured for most of his adult life. Many recordings have survived and his books have been published. As an artist, he drew as he talked and wrote. He illustrated his lectures with diagrams to aid understanding of his concepts. His knowledge was visual and grounded in experience, not simply intellectual. He drew as he worked with individuals to explain the structure of the psyche and to express characteristics of the person he was working with or their ancestors. Or he may have given them a drawing lesson. Many folk went away from these sessions with a drawing or diagrams to study and treasure. Eugene and Kathe Schuftan were kindred spirits. They shared a love of art and of philosophy. In particular, William Blake and Jacob Boehme. Both Blake and Boehme were deep, original thinkers from humble origins, who had an intense inner spiritual life and saw visions, which they expressed through their writings and visual imagery. Blake was a working-class artist and writer who grew up in the Christian mystical tradition of the Moravian Church. Ignored in his day, he was, but now he is much revered. Blake was also influenced by the work of Boehme. Boehme was a shoemaker and a deep thinker, a philosopher, Christian mystic and Lutheran theologian, not what you would have expected from a shoemaker. A very special person with great insight, but his work was so controversial for his time, to the Protestant Reformation, that he delayed publication for many years and still ran into trouble even then. Kathe held soirees in her reputedly squalid flat. She was creative, not house-proud. Eugene would talk there long into the night, and also at his own home and elsewhere. They talked and worked together and shared books. A portfolio which came to light at auction early this year showed them painting each other and even working on a painting together. In reviews of art shows from the 1940s to 50s in Manchester, their use of symbolism was linked, and also the challenging nature of their subject matter. Both of them were influential to other artists, giving encouragement and drawing lessons. Kathe mentored the sculptor John Milne when he was a teenager at college. He went on to work with Barbara Hepworth in 1952 and then became a notable artist in his own right. He's regarded as one of the most interesting and sophisticated of the sculptors associated with St. Ives. J.P. Hodan wrote movingly about John Milne and Kathe Schuftan. Here he's writing about a drawing which Milne had made. This particular drawing was done to release his sorrow after the sudden death of a friend of his, the German Jewish painter Kathe Schuftan, who had given him as a student much encouragement. She in fact had a lasting influence on him. It is a deeply religious drawing of an upward movement to the light and a round movement creating a special depth which suggests infinity. Kathe Schuftan was a victim of Nazi persecution, and although she had suffered a great deal, and in spite of being a strongly emotional person, she felt no resentment when she remembered, after having escaped to England, the beating she had gone through. What impressed John Milne most strongly was when he heard that, after having been tortured, she could sit with her tormentors and discuss the beauties of Paul Klee or other aspects of art. She herself worked in an expressionist style reminiscent of Katie Colvick's social pathos. Besides her pure heart and character, she had a strong, critical mind, and later she warned John Milne, after he decided to go to Barbara Hepworth, that this might destroy him. He, however, felt the need of a strong discipline and of a perfect craftsmanship, relying on his own inner strength to enable him to carry through his artistic aspirations after such a decisive experience. Kathe was a chain smoker, and this, together with her brutal treatment by the Nazis, led to her early death from cancer in February 1958, aged 59. She had received compensation for her uprooting and for her sufferings from the German government, but died a few weeks later, prematurely but unbroken. Eugene gave the tribute at her funeral. It's just a little extract. I know that she wouldn't wish us to say anything about her or say a prayer for her other than that which came from the real, deep, inner centre of spirit in each of us. And I know, therefore, that each one of us will wish for her, pray for her, and have faith for her, only in that thing which we in our ground centre can affirm for her. She had very little regard for established form, none at all for static concepts. She believed in creative energy, and she believed that creative energy was one with universal spirit. She has lived, and always with her art and her great energy, tried to provoke everybody else to live in the light of freedom, in the light of spirit. And if, therefore, we could have a way of remembering her, let us always remember her as a prophetess of spirit and of freedom. That is all that she would want from us. And it's this tribute that actually set me looking for Kathe, and I discovered this a couple of years after my mum died in my mum's papers. And it's this that made me realise that they were kindred spirits, because the things Eugene said about Kathe Schuftan in his tribute, I feel you could equally well say about him. That's what set me off on this journey. Eugene cleared Kate's room, photographed her work, and arranged an exhibition for her at Salford Art Gallery, long promised but unfulfilled. And here's the review from The Guardian of that exhibition. Kathe Schuftan once said of her years in and out of concentration camps that in the end she understood and almost sympathised with her torturers. Only a German could meet so levelly the scorn of the Nazi Party, searing public disgrace, the breakup of family, the destruction of paintings, poisonous imprisonment. But there is no hatred in the little retrospective show of watercolours at the Salford City Art Gallery this month, only a deep bitterness. Some would be shocked by their lack of religion, by the repeated vision of God as a master puppeteer, by their muted agony. But hers was an innately gentle expressionism in which forced indignity stands close to nobility, and where the one blind beer cellar orgy flouts itself as patently ridiculous. Perhaps any art inseparable from hostile political climate is difficult to grasp, for its power comes from unpleasant overtones which we instinctively fear. To be moved is to identify ourselves with an abnormality we cannot understand, too remote now to meet with an honest, humble pity. That Kathe Schuftan was an eloquent watercolourist is beyond dispute. That a gesture of reparation for her suffering should be made when the debt was long ago inexpiable is an irony she would have shrugged away. It hardly matters now whether we like this painting or not, or indeed whether it is good or bad. What matters is that we remember Kathe Schuftan and understand. And that's what we're doing now. Eugene returned Kate's work to her brother, and her work disappeared for many years. She was forgotten to all but her close friends. In fact, I have very, very recently made contact with her family through her nieces, their children and children, and they knew nothing about her. They came across her by accident while doing family history research on Kate's brother, their grandfather. Came across my Wikipedia article and said, "She looks just like so-and-so in our family. Can she be related to us?" And I've never heard of her, so it's an amazing story. Eugene was very moved by the nature of Kate's tragic early death, and he became very ill himself later that same year, 1958. Throughout the 1940s and 50s, he had been writing and developing his teaching, philosophical and healing work. As he recovered, he gave up the plaster model business and together with Ken Ratcliffe founded an organisation which had been mooted for some time, through which to disseminate his teaching, the International Hermeneutic Society, or IHS. Ken had moved from the Isle of Man to Liverpool and set up a group to teach Eugene's work through the medium of yoga, which Eugene defined as the joining together of the individual consciousness of man with the absolute consciousness of his source. Eugene was now teaching in both Manchester and Liverpool, and Ken was publishing Eugene's work in pamphlet form. The IHS and a second organisation founded by Eugene in South Manchester, ISHVAL, the Institute for the Study of Hierological Values, an educational charity at that time. Both of these, the IHS and ISHVAL, thrived. In 1971, the IHS also became a charity and moved from Liverpool to Tan-y-Garth Hall. Eugene died in 1987, and the charity ISHVAL continued, run by his literary executor David Marlowe and the trustees. Ken died in 1992, and the IHS continued with the dedicated support of his widow Anne, who has died just recently, and the trustees. Ken had asked another of Eugene's close friends and students, Donald Lord, to become the Director of Studies. Donald, who had met Eugene in 1942 at the art school, and was also a friend of Kathe Schuftan, continued to guide the society until his death in 2012. David Marlowe died in 1998, and ISHVAL continues, as does the Eugene Halliday Association. After Eugene's death, David Marlowe founded the Halliday Review, the journal for Eugene's shorter pieces and artwork, and work by his students and friends, and the Melchizedek Press to publish Eugene's works in hardback. Possibly Eugene's most important book, Reflexive Self-Consciousness, is out of stock. They've all gone, so all those books have found a home, and a new publication, a fourth edition, is due out on the 1st of October. And I've got a copy, a proof copy here you can have a look at. I'll get it now. This is coming out as a paperback and an e-book. So that's the new edition of Reflexive Self-Consciousness, which will be available to you shortly. And it's revised thanks to our reading group. Sheila and Robert aren't here. Zohar, Sheila and Robert. Some of them were reading the early IHS version, and some of us were reading the later hardback, and we discovered a few discrepancies. Some bits were missing, the odd word was different. So the missing bits have been restored, and a decision has been taken about which word to use, where there was a slight change. So it's a new, revised, slightly enlarged version of Reflexive Self-Consciousness. So you can have a look at that. Please do not take it away, it's my proof copy. And I am going to do it in a slightly better quality of paper than the one you see here.
And what will the charge be?
So there's my advert for my book. And thank you all very much. And does anyone have any questions or comments before we break for tea?
How much will the new edition cost?
How much will it be?
I think it's worth each as well.
How much do you think it's worth?
But I suppose
Is a tenner too much?
I think no.
About a tenner and then a fiver for the e-book.
And 5
Yeah, the e-book will be available through your e-readers or online down onto your computer. This you get online or from any bookshop. So please support your independent bookshops if you have them. Or I will get some copies in here. You can get them direct here as well. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, before you all disappear, we have some things for you to look at here. These are Kathe Schuftan's works. These are Eugene's works. This is a taster for the exhibition at Tan-y-Garth. It is also a salon de refusé, because these are the works that didn't go in because there wasn't room. But you've got a selection here of Eugene's early work showing his draftsmanship from early college days and illustration work, a self-portrait, photos of Eugene and Kathe, a portrait of Eugene's mother in his early portrait style, a drawing he did for Greta Clegg. I've just discovered very recently through making a few inquiries on it for another reason that Greta actually died about 2 years ago, and because she hadn't been coming and wasn't keeping in touch with us, we didn't know. But I got in touch through inquiring about her botanical artwork, which is absolutely beautiful, and she's remembered by the people in the Botanical Society. So there's a drawing he did for her, and a couple of the prints which many of you know about, but some of you may not have seen. So these are originals, those are prints. These are photographs, it's a self-portrait, copy of his oil painting. Now, big oil painting by Eugene is a bit of a rarity because he didn't have time for that kind of painting. And this, which is amazing, this portfolio, which turned up at auction this year, and the person who bought it, thankfully, contacted me and let me photograph them all. It's a self-portrait of Kathe Schuftan and a portrait of Eugene, when he had a beard.
And they're both by Kathe, are they?
These are by Kathe Schuftan. They're big, they're like this size. Very interestingly, he's wearing the same clothes in this portrait and his own self-portrait over there. Blue jacket and green shirt, very bohemian. So please have a look at these during the break. And there's a variety of different paintings of Kathe Schuftan. These are prints which were sent for us for the exhibition by a collector called David Threadgold, who, when I came across him, had bought a portfolio in the 1990s and had been sitting on it, trying to find information out about her for about 20 years when we came across each other. And he sent these big prints from his collection.
about a lady called Byron Kathe, and she wrote the book, which is over there, A Mind at Home with Itself. So, yeah, here we go. She came into my life probably about 2 years ago, and I was absolutely fascinated with her. So this is about her and how she thinks. 32 years ago, Byron Kathe came out of a 10-year depression. She had lost her identity, she was filled with self-loathing, and was even sleeping on the floor as she didn't feel she deserved a bed. Byron Kathe was now in a halfway house as her family was scared of her. They never knew what she was going to do. She was now at the end of her first week in the highway house. A cockroach climbed over her foot and woke her up. As she opened her eyes in that moment, she experienced a joy that she is still experiencing today. She saw in that moment what is real, important. She saw a window. Beyond the window was a sky. There was a wall, a floor. Prior to seeing these things, they did not exist. So she literally believed her world into being. The first sound that came out of her was laughter. Katie suddenly got it. She walked into the bathroom, looked into the mirror, but it was like eyes in the mirror were looking at her, into her eyes. Something happened there. It was like being in a dream, then coming back. She talks about the world, but says she can never be in the world. Everyone has a right to freedom. Everyone has the right to understand how to find freedom. And that is what she is doing with thework.com. Everybody can go to thework.com. It's all free. You can print off the worksheets that are on there. And she's really, really good. Byron Kathe believes she went into such a deep depression because she was believing her thoughts. No one cares about me. Life is hopeless. Other people are smarter than me. My children don't care about me, and on and on. She learned, listening to the human race, that there are no new stressful thoughts. In every language in the world, they're all the same. We are still stuck with the things that were chiseled into rocks. The most common thoughts are, he, she, they don't care about me, there is something wrong with me, I'm broken, I can't do it, this is too hard, other people are smarter than I am, other people are happier than I am, he or she hurt me, lied to me, broke my heart. Why are we so conditioned to think like this and believe what we are thinking? I see a picture in my mind's eye. This is Katie speaking. This situation no longer exists as time has moved on, but in my mind I still have a picture of a negative situation. He doesn't care about me. I see the situation in the future, in my mind's eye, of how the negative situation will be, so I'm believing this talk because I am. I'm left or I'm right when I should be here. So the question is, why are these thoughts bothering us? It's like when Katie was on the floor, when she saw the sky, the wall and the window. You have to believe in something before you can see it. You have to believe it in your mind. First, you have to believe it. You have to believe it as well before you can know it's a wall. life is a dream, then you cannot stop yourself from thinking, but don't think of past and future, stay in the now. And yes, Byron Katie has worked with Eckhart Tolle. Be now, be present. Stop being your thoughts. What is, is. Stop worrying about situations. They just are. I didn't think it would be so difficult to explain something that is so simple. I'm now using the principle of Katie's work in my life as much as I can. Once I do this with a situation, the situation becomes for me much easier to cope with. I accept where I am supposed to be. I accept life is what it is. Be present in the now. Stop fighting to change things. Stop trying to change others. Accept each person as they are. If I can do this, my life becomes so much easier and unstressful. It becomes enjoyable at last. And as Eugene said, there are no accidents, no coincidences. What is, is. A prime example for me is my house, where I live now. I didn't want to move there. I was completely ignored when I voiced my disagreement. Sorry, I can't read my own writing. I tried to move for 35 years, fighting everything on my way to get out of the place. 10 years ago, I gave up. This was before Byron Katie. And said, I looked up and said, my God, okay, I accept this is where I'm supposed to be. Life has been so much more comfortable for me since I have accepted this. Something else I have discovered or realised over the years is if you don't go down the road you're supposed to be on, you will be pushed. And here's a little bit about Katie herself. The work of Byron Katie and question the thoughts. The work of Byron Katie is a way to identify and question the thoughts that cause all the suffering in the world. It is a way to find peace with yourself and with the world. Anyone with an open mind can do this work. Byron Kathleen Reed became severely depressed while in her 30s. Over a 10-year period, her depression deepened, and for the last 2 years, Katie, as she is called, was seldom able to leave her bedroom. Then one morning, from the depths of despair, she experienced a life-changing realization. That was the cockroach. Katie saw that when she believed her thoughts, she suffered, and that when she didn't believe her thoughts, she didn't suffer. What had been causing her depression was not the world around her, but what she believed about the world around her. In a flash of insight, she saw that our attempt to find happiness was backward. Instead of hopelessly trying to change the world to match our thoughts and how it should be, we can question these thoughts and, by meeting reality as it is, experience unimaginable freedom and joy. As a result, a bedridden, suicidal woman became filled with love and everything life brings. Katie developed a simple yet powerful method of inquiry called the work that showed people how to free themselves. Her insight into the mind is consistent with leading-edge research in cognitive neuroscience, and the work has been compared to Socratic dialogue, Buddhist teachings, and 12-step programs. But Katie developed her method without any knowledge of religion or psychology. The work is based purely on one woman's direct experience of how suffering is created and ended. It is astonishingly simple, accessible to people of all ages and backgrounds, and requires nothing more than a pen and paper and a willingness to open the mind. Kathe saw right away that giving people her insights or answers was of little value. Instead, she offers a process that can give people their own answers. The first people exposed to her work reported that the experience was transformational, and she soon began receiving invitations to teach the process publicly. Since 1986, Kathe has introduced the work to millions of people around the world. In addition to public events, she has done the work in corporations, universities, schools, churches, prisons and hospitals. Kathe's joy and humour immediately put people at ease, and the deep insights and breakthroughs that participants quickly experience make the events captivating. Since 1998, Kathe has directed the School for the Work, a 9-day curriculum offered several times a year. The school is an approved provider of continuing education units in the United States, and many psychologists, counsellors and therapists report that the work is becoming the most important part of their practice. Kathe also presents a 4-day no-body intensive and an annual New Year's mental cleanse, a 4-day program of continuous inquiry that takes place in Los Angeles at the end of December. She sometimes offers weekend workshops as well, audio and video recordings of Kathe facilitating the work on a wide range of topics. Sex, money, the body, parenting, etc. are available at her events and on her website, thework.com. Kathe's most important books is a list of input books then. She has worked with Eckhart Tolle. She's written several books with various people, including Eckhart Tolle. Kathe says, what is. The only time we suffer is when we believe a thought that argues with what is. When the mind is perfectly clear, what is what we want. If you want reality to be different than it is, you might as well try to teach a cat to bark. You can try, and in the end, the cat will look at you and say, meow. Wanting reality to be different than it is hopeless. And yet, if you pay attention, you'll notice that you believe thoughts like this dozens of times a day. People should be kinder. Children should be well behaved. My husband or wife should agree with me. I should be thinner or prettier or more successful. These thoughts are ways of wanting reality to be different than it is. If you think that this sounds depressing, you're right. All the stress that we feel is caused by arguing with what is. People new to the work often say, it would be disempowering to stop my argument with reality. If I simply accept reality, I'll become passive. I may even lose the desire to act. Answer them with a question. Can you really know that that's true? Which is more empowering? I wish I hadn't lost my job, or I lost my job. What intelligent solutions can I find right now? The work reveals that you think shouldn't have happened, should have happened. It should have happened because it did happen. And no thinking in the world can change that. This doesn't mean you condone it or approve it. It just means that you can see things without resistance and without the confusion of your inner struggle. No one wants to see their children get sick. No one wants to be in a car accident. But when these things happen, how can it be helpful to mentally argue with them? We know better than to do that, yet we do it because we don't know how to stop. Kathe says, I'm a lover of what is, not because I'm a spiritual person, but because it hurts when I argue with reality. We can know that reality is good just as it is, because when we argue with it, we experience tension, frustration. We don't feel a natural balance. When we stop opposing reality, action becomes simple, fluid, kind, and fearless. The next section is Kathe describing 3 kinds of business. There seems to be 3 kinds of business in the universe: mine, yours, and God's. For me, God's word means reality. Reality is God because it rules anything that's out of my control and your control and everyone else's control. I call that God's business. Much of our stress comes from mentally living out of our own business. When you think you need to get a job, I want you to be happy. You should be on time. You need to take better care of yourself. I'm in your business. When I'm worried about earthquakes, floods, war, or when will I die, I'm in God's business. If I'm mentally in your business or in God's business, the effect is separation. I noticed this early in 1986 when she, this is Kathe, sorry, when she mentally went into her mother's business, for example, with a thought like, my mother should understand me. She immediately experienced a feeling of loneliness and realised that every time in her life that she had felt hurt or lonely, she had been in someone else's business. If you are living your life, and I am mentally living your life, who is here living mine? We're both over there. Being mentally in your business keeps me from being present in my own. I'm separate from myself, wondering why my life doesn't work. To think that I know what's best for anyone else is to be out of my business. Even in the name of love, it's pure arrogance, and the result is tension, anxiety, and fear. Do I know what's right for me? That is my only business. Let me work with that before I try to solve your problems for you. If you understand the 3 kinds of business enough to stay in your own business, it could free your life in a way that you can't even imagine. The next time you're feeling stress or discomfort, ask yourself whose business you're in mentally, and you may burst out laughing. That question can bring you back to yourself, and you may come to see that you've never really been present, that you've been mentally living in other people's business all your life. Just to notice that you're in someone else's business can bring you back to your own wonderful self. And if you practice it for a while, you may come to see that you don't have any business either, and that your life runs perfectly well on its own. I'm going to finish up now with something that I think it was Vida gave me at one of the classes. And this puts me in mind of Kathe seeing the sky and the cockroach walking over her foot and the wall and the window at the very beginning when she came out of her depression. And Vida gave me this. It says, seeing must not be limited to evidence alone, because evidence is shaped by the seeing that beholds it. And that's what we have to keep in our heads and stay in our own business. And don't try and change the world, because the world will change itself and there's nothing you can do about it. Sorry for the stumbling. And I'm glad it's over. That was nerve-wracking. I didn't know I couldn't read so much.
Anyone got any questions for Kathe? What's setting off on the wrong path to start with?
Thinking all these thoughts
Yeah.
that people don't care for me, my children don't care for me, you're better than I am, you're thinner than I am.
That's sort of like glass half empty.
And she just, and she just took everything on and kept it all inside, and she went lower and lower and lower. Her family was scared of her, but when she went in the halfway house, they made her sleep at the top of the house and put a sort of a tripwire that set something off, so that they would know if she got up and came downstairs, because they were so scared of her. Yeah. 10 years she just went lower and lower and lower until that cockroach walked over her foot, which is quite amazing, really. But I experienced it. I mentioned it to the people at the Gita group the other week. I applied for a job. I worked in social services with children 11 to 17, and one of the interviewers asked me what was the worst shift I'd ever had. So I told them which shift it was, which they knew about because it was so diabolical. And then another one said, what's the best shift you've ever had? And I thought for a moment, and I said to him, I'll go for the same shift. And that was when the realisation, like trying to move, I didn't want to go to this place where I am in the first place, but was just took. I mean, it was an outside loo, it had gas lights in the wall. I went to visit somebody from Manchester University, and her husband said he'd never met me before. He said, where do you live? I said, in Stretford. Oh, what kind of a house is that? I said, well, it's done in early decay. He said, early decade? I said, no, early decay. And his wife said, oh, she's just joking. But it was true. It was an awful place. And I'm still there, 45 years and I'm still there. So I accept. This is where I'm supposed to be. Yes. And that's the trick. Accepting everything that is, because it is.
It just is.
Have you still got the outside loo and the gas lights? I wanted to ask that.
No, but we did build a wall around the outside loo.
You embraced it. Embraced it outside.
Yeah, and the gas lights have gone.
Accepting and then changing what you can.
Yes, yes. And there's all scaffolding up now. I'm having a new roof tomorrow. So obviously I'm going to stay a bit longer. I better move on now. Yeah. But this is where I'm supposed to be.
It's where we're all supposed to be.
Exactly. So stop walking against it all the time.
Because all we can do while we're here is to learn whatever is being offered.
Yes. Sit back and enjoy Boris, enjoy the Donald, because there's nothing we can do about it. Just sit and gaze in awe and wonder.
You're watching them play
Wow.
out their own business.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that expression, whatever is in front of you is your teacher. And then I look at Boris and Trump, I think, yeah, that's taught me a lot.
Yes. Yes.
Not to be.
There's no use being angry. It's just a waste of energy.
There's a couple of things you read there. There was clarity, as if, you know, when you're looking at somebody else's business,
Yeah.
you've not got clarity. Like you wouldn't see how to improve your house.
Yes.
You were too busy worrying about it.
The other
Once that's
person's
gone, they
house.
accept it.
Yes.
Then the way forward looks clear, doesn't it?
Yes, she says at one point, which I didn't get across very well, she said, if I'm here and here, thinking about this person that doesn't like me and how they reacted, which is only in here because it's not in them, and I'm thinking, next time I see them, how are they going to feel when they see me? And worrying about it, I'm not here giving this talk, and I should be concentrating on this, not on what past and future. I should be concentrating on now and only now, because that's all we've got.
I've got an example of that was a lesson for me. We were in ashram in India in the, what's the thing called where you go in the, what's the thing called that you go to in the morning, the mandir. And so everybody's sitting there silently with the guy coming in. And the person behind me was laughing and whatever, and I thought, oh my gosh. And it was disturbing me, and I knew we should be silent. I wanted to be silent, everybody else was silent, but she was sort of going on, and I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to tell her to be silent by staying silent? So eventually I turned around to her, smiled, and just did this, put my finger to my lips. And she turned on me and said, if you want to be silent, you just deal with it. That was a big lesson. It was my disturbance. It was me that was upset by her speaking.
Yes.
I had to deal with it. So
Yes.
I couldn't at that time, but somehow it was, you know,
Yeah.
I was so shocked at that response. But it's true.
You were in her business.
Yeah.
It's a bit like meditation, isn't it? The noises in the background
Yes.
of meditation are actually helpful.
Yes.
They don't disturb you.
Yes.
They're there and you're aware of them, but somehow the stillness where you are is highlighted by the noises in the distance. There's a separation.
There's a line in Mars Attacks, Jack Nicholson. He's having a drink and his wife just joined AA. And she said, you have to sit there drinking in front of me. He said, you're an adult, deal with it. Which is exactly what you just said. Yeah.
You've got to find a way to deal with it,
Yes.
whatever the situation is that is presented to you.
Yes.
I saw another thing, it's nothing to do with minding your own business that you're saying, but it said somebody's opinion of you is none of your business.
Yes.
So I didn't understand it, but then I thought about it, I thought, yes, I know what it means.
Yeah. Because what's in their mind is not you. It's what they think of you, what they see, and it's how they're feeling. It's definitely not you, which is past, future. Yeah.
Interesting. And how do you spell Byron?
Byron, B-Y-R-O-N. The book's over there. I just downloaded it off the internet. I think I found her on YouTube. Alan just asked me, I can't remember.
It is in hardback, you know, in paper copy as well.
Yes,
So,
yes.
I've got a
But
copy.
everything's free.
Yeah.
And she doesn't charge for anything because she wants everybody to know and understand and be at peace with themselves, which is what the book's called, A Mind at Peace with Itself. But she's written several. Be here, be now. Yeah.
spent 40 years in the UK industry as a scientist, but I also did a diploma in remedial massage. And that was with an organisation called the School of Holistic Medicine, London and Glasgow. And they believed in a certain model about the human body and stress and how it interacted in your life, your psychological life. And so they were into remedial massage, homeopathy, bioenergetics and diet. And they thought all of these were interrelated. And basically believed in the Wilhelm Reich's model of the stress in your body is due to your psychological makeup and your issues. And Reich called it body armour. And there were a lot of indications during the massage where people would break down. And they were having tension released in the body, and it brought up a lot of emotional issues. And they also, part of the training was to how to judge when people have got stress in certain parts of your bodies. And I know that a masseur will spend an awful lot of time on your shoulders. You carry an awful lot of stress in the upper part of your body, around your shoulders. And I go for a massage every 2 weeks, and the lady spends about 15 minutes of the hour just hammering my shoulders. And so it's useful to be able to know when you're holding tension in your shoulders. And I can see some people are moving around already. And so this is a way of, first of all, identifying if you've got tension there, and also how you can be conscious of it. So it is, if people want to, you can participate in what I'm going to propose. But first of all, I'm going to call on my beautiful assistants to give you an indication of tension in your body, in your shoulders. And this is one of the tests they used to do. And I noticed when I ran the massage workshop a couple of years ago, I could see that people had the tension in their legs. There's a test there, and I could see that a lot of people had tension in their legs after the massage. So anyway, this is the test, and this is what I'm going to propose that you do on each other to see if you're completely relaxed or not in the shoulder area. But I'm going to maybe call on somebody else because Sue I know is pretty relaxed. So, but what you do is you take their hand, and what you're after is that the person to give you their arm. I tried this with my mother years ago, and I lifted her arm up like that, and I let go of my hand, and her arm stayed upright, even though she insisted it was relaxed. What you do is you start to swing the arm like that, and you should feel no resistance, because people generally hang on and they take control. And the other one, and then I just felt some resistance. It didn't drop under gravity. You know, it's a matter of you give me your arm, and there's still resistance. I can feel that the weight is reducing as I go down, and that's a sure sign that people are holding tension in the upper arm and in the shoulder. I brought actually something with me which is really good for relaxing people who've got chronic conditions. So, just going down, you see, let's try the other side. So, let's quickly try the other side. And just shake. It should really flop around. I can feel the resistance going up and going down now. Anyway, That's the exercise I'm used to. Now I'm going to call on this young man here who's driven all the way across the country.
I'm really tense. Okay.
Let's see what happens here. Guaranteed to be tense. He's actually brought his hand up. He's actually brought it up like that for me. And now he's lifting his arm for me. I can't move it. I can't move it back or forward. Just let it go. Can you let it go? Can you see it? It's not. I'm trying to help me. There is a solution, don't we? I've got a way of you.
I think we have to.
Now, I'm not using any strength. Let's see if I can get you relaxed. You want me to just use my tremendous device? You let me to. Deep breath.
Good Lord. Oh, that's quite painful.
Wow. That's how tense your shoulder muscles are, not the shoulder blade. Again, breathe in and out. So,
Can I breathe in?
I propose that we break. I can't do anything here. Poor man, but how's that?
That's all right. This could take a bit of time. Oh, my goodness. Ah, you'd be breaking on the nerves.
Let's have another go. That's better up and down. Not much better.
Oh, it's better
Well,
than it was.
it's not better. Yeah. Okay. We're going up. We're going down. And what that is, the body is anticipating the movement, and then the mind gets involved.
Does the hammer work faster?
Sorry. What?
Have you seen my remedial?
No. Well, it looks like a mallet.
So what I suggest, we just quickly break up into two, for those who want to be involved with it, and do it on your partner, and I'll come round and see how you're getting on quickly. We'll just do that for 5 or so minutes. So
Can I just say, as the person being talked to, your job is to relax.
your job is to relax.
To allow the person that is doing whatever they're doing to do it, so just go with the people.
So if we into twos and you stand next to your partner, the person who's going to receive your treatment sits down, the other person will need to be on their feet.
Do you feel relaxed?
So I'm going to tell you how you can be aware of your shoulders. Basically, well, is that if you're in a tense situation, you'll raise your shoulders slightly and you will forget to relax. And so you're walking around with your shoulders just high. Especially if you're carrying something. You know, these arms are not going to be relaxed if you are holding something, a bag or whatever. Even if you have something on your shoulder, you'll raise that to keep it on. So try not to do that. Try not to walk carrying something. And I'll do an exercise with you, but basically it's about lifting your shoulders right up and then dropping them. Lifting it up and dropping them. And also to allow these arms, when you lean forward, we'll do this in a few minutes, and they're moving around under gravity. You're not being involved with your muscles. And when you're walking around, and when I first did this, it felt really foreign. You're just allowing your arms to flop about. And if you turn to your right, you're just doing that. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. You're not walking. There was a guy who used to come for coffee that I used to work with, and he used to come down the corridor like this. And we said to him, "Are you aware of your arms?" Well, you know, they didn't know what was abnormal about it. And so we said, "Why don't you relax your arms?" And so next morning he came down the corridor. So we said, "Okay, go back to where you were." So, you know, that was in the work situation where you can't really cross boundaries with people. But it's about allowing your arms just to relax by your sides when you're not involved in anything with your arms. But because it's the fight or flight situation, people tend to be ready for the worst. It's all mind stuff, as we've heard. And so people are tense, especially if you're going into a new situation or whatever. You will raise your shoulders and your arms will stiffen up. So if you try to be aware of that and do the exercise which I'm going to give you now. If you stand up, get a bit of space around you, and then just try raising your shoulders to the as high as you can, right up, and then drop them. Raise them up again, and drop them. And just start to move left to right and feel those arms moving round. So turn fast enough so that they will move, and it's just, you're not doing a special movement, you're just letting your arms flop. So go faster and then slow it right down.
Yeah.
And then try walking round. Try walking round and turning. Try flopping your arms. Just let your arms go with the motion. Don't move your arms from left to right. Just as your body turns, your arms will move naturally. Again, concentrate on the shoulders. Have a look. Your come back to our seats and I only live down the road and I walk to the shop here for my paper a number of mornings a week. I just let my arms go, and then once you get a certain pace going, those arms will move, but you're not getting involved. You're not going like this. You're allowing your arms to just flop around. So that's what they tried to get us to do when we were training in massage, because that's what we were trying to impart to the clients. I don't know whether you feel that you've got a new thought about it all.
I felt quite false you doing that, like a teenager sort of.
Yeah. Free movement. I wouldn't walk down the street the way you would.
The thing is, you have to keep reminding yourself, because I think if I'm reading something or somebody says something, it reminds me that I'm tense, and then I sort of think, oh, where are my shoulders? Am I lower than any sort of thing? But you need constant reminders of some sort.
You do. And also, try to sit properly when you're watching telly, because I know if I sit asymmetrically, invariably my shoulders get tense. So don't sit, like this watching the telly. Try to sit upright and then aware of the weight of your legs on your feet, and put your arms in a relaxed way when you're watching telly, and become aware of it. I'm more aware of when my shoulders are getting tense now because of the training and the fact that you have to open your mind to it, and then it becomes easier to recognise.
I read many years ago, somebody said, if you don't think you're tense, notice how you clean your teeth.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, and it's about taking the time. You'll be tense if you're in a hurry.
Yeah.
If you've not allowed enough time for things, you will be. So, because the stress is going to come through your body.
And then that will build up, won't it?
Yeah.
You haven't got time to clean your teeth, so you get tenser than I've got time to get the bus or whatever,
So we're just about to finish. Any questions?
Can we do this again?